Hey, come here. I got a secret to tell you. This game is between Peter Svidler and Wesley, so shh. Don't tell anybody. Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, of course, it's in the thumbnail. Everybody's gonna know. But don't tell anybody, for real. Anyways, Malik Young Pak Dotting saw my chest, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Like I said, I do have the Peter Svidler versus Wesley So game. Shh, don't say anything. It is round 9. And I'm gonna go through it. I'm gonna try to make it where it's not so long of a game. I think I'm gonna probably try to be able to get 8 minutes in this one. But I do want to actually do the game Fabiano Caruana versus Richard Report, because it was a very interesting game. I definitely got a little bit of time left, so I'm gonna hit a 4th video, which is rare. So yay me. Anyways, if you guys are ready to go, I will say okay. First, Mabu hi to my people in the Philippines. Masaya Kong Makita Kang Muli. I learned hello Yulit. Hello again to you guys. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Anybody who is coming from Russia, I will say привет to you. Dobre otra. Как дела? Спасибо for coming by and taking a look at my stuff. And if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we have for this game. So we got e4, e5, knight comes to f3, knight to c6, bishop to b5. And this is going to be the craziest game you've ever seen in your life. Knight to f6, it's the Berlin. Man, no, I'm playing. It is the Roy Lopez Berlin variation. These are lines that we've seen before, but just running through the moves. We have castles by white. Knight takes e4, but, this isn't losing a pawn. You're going to be getting it back. Rook to e1, knight up to d6. You see, knight takes e5. And as you guys, of course, know, you're not going to be taking here because you're going to be looking at this oopsie. And the queen is super depressed. So we do see bishop to e7 covering that check. Bishop comes back down to f1. We see knight takes e5. Rook takes e5. Castles by black. We got d4. Bishop to f6. Rook to e1. And you're seeing me kind of run through these moves just a little quick. This is all very standard stuff. Just pretty much each side just kind of getting their pieces into the game. The rook comes to e8. We see bishop to f4. Rook takes e1. Queen takes e1. We got knight back to e8. We see c3. We got d5. A bishop comes to d3. g6. Knight to d2. Knight being ketoed on g7. We see knight to f3. And then we see bishop to f5. Even though it looks kind of strange for this knight to come on to g7, there's a very legitimate reason why it's doing that, because you do want to develop the bishop here. With the tempo, or in one tempo. And, if this bishop takes, you want to be able to take back with the knight so you don't damage your structure in front of your king. So it's very legit. Bishop takes f5, knight takes f5. We see queen to e2. We got c6, rook comes to e1. We see knight back to g7. We got bishop to e5. Bishop takes e5, a knight takes e5. Queen comes to d6. We see queen to f3. f6, because black is saying, I do not like your knight in the middle of the board. And the crazy thing about it is we're still in known theory. Like this, we have not gotten to the novelty yet. So for those of you that are wondering, like, hey, man, we haven't got to a novelty. No, we haven't, man. We just haven't. So the knight comes back down to d3. We see rook over to e8. Rook takes e8, knight takes e8. And then we now have the novelty of the game, which is queen to g4. It's just a very legitimate move. You are wanting to try to penetrate on c8, maybe snagging this pawn over here, trying to see what we got going on. But we do see queen to e7. And, you definitely have some possible back rank issues. So, we see king to f1. We got knight down to d6. We see queen to e2. Queen takes e2. King takes e2. And then we do have h5. We got knight to f4. And we see king down to f7. And I know what you guys are thinking. You're like, man, this is looking like it's about to be a draw. Well, I will say that Wesley So does have a chance coming up into the position, but we'll get to that in a second. We got king to d3. We see h4. We got g3, g5, further knocking the knight away. Knight comes back down to e2. We see king to g6. We got f3. Pawn takes g3. Pawn takes g3. We got g4. And then we throw a nice little intermezzo move in there. So we got knight to f4 with check. King comes to f5. We see king down to e2. Knight comes to c4. We see knight to d3. We got a5, b3. Pawn takes f3 with check. we see king takes f3. We got knight down to d2, and then we have king to e3. And this is a somewhat critical position that we've actually gotten into. And you guys remember me a second ago talking about the chance that maybe Wesley so has. If you guys want to go ahead and pause the video, and there are actually two moves in the position that actually give black, you know, a pretty nice advantage, and it kind of like gives them, you know, it puts a real fight in white's hands. So go ahead and pause the video and see if you can guess one of these two moves, or both of them, whatever. Okay, cool. So what we actually see in the game, which it still keeps things pretty even, is actually knight to e4. You know, you have a situation where, you know, it seems like you kind of have a double attack on the pawns, but we'll get to that in a second. One of the two moves, or both of the moves, is actually either knight to b1 or knight to f1. And this gives some attacks that, you know, black just has a really hard time trying to defend. So if we actually go knight to f1, like I mean, if you did guess knight to f1 or knight to b1, you're a gangster. You kind of like realize that coming behind the pawns was pretty beneficial. You would see king to f2, knight coming back to d2, knight up to c5, got b6, knight to d7, knight to e4 with check, king comes to f3, and then you have knight taking c3, and then you've, you know, managed to grab your pawn. Now, if you did go knight to b1, it actually forced white to play a little bit more like accurately. You would see c4 getting away from the knight, because as you guys can see, there was no way to come around and try to protect that pawn. Pawn takes c4, pawn takes c4, then you have knight to a3. And as you can see, black is just continuously just threatening, you know, threatening white. You might see something like knight to b2, but knight would come to c2 with check, king would step over to d3, and then knight to b4, and you guys are going to be snagging a pawn. So you've managed to win a pawn in both different variations. But like I said, in the game, we saw king to e3, we saw knight to e4, we saw c4, you know, threatening to go ahead and take the pawn here, you know, so yes, we see knight to c3, we see pawn takes d5, pawn takes d5, we got knight to f4, knight takes a2, knight takes d5, we see king to e6, knight to f4 with check, we got king to d6, king down to d2, knight comes to b4, one of its escape squares. We see g4, knight to d5. We see knight to h5. We got b5, knight to g3. We got a4, pawn takes a4, pawn takes a4. We got king to d3. We see a3, and now, you know, we see king to c2 because, I mean, you're dealing with the square of the pawn in this situation. So you definitely have to start, you know, stepping closer to this pawn so it doesn't run away and just create a queen. So knight comes to e3 with check, we see king to b3. Knight comes to g4, we see knight to e4 with check, we see king to d5. And I believe in this position that Peter Svidler was just being funny. He went ahead and just took, you know, knight takes f6 with check. And I mean, that's just giving away the knight. But as you guys will see, after the knight takes, you have king takes a3. And, you know, black does not have sufficient mating material. Going back, let me see, after knight to c4, you had this position that we had here, where the knight came and attacked both of these. I actually didn't too much look at this variation, I mean, I'm trying to see if this is not possible here. I guess you have this, and then you have a situation where you're not able to, I guess, adequately protect this pawn, so this pawn is going to be passed. I'm assuming you'd probably do this, but you would be able to sidestep there. No? Yeah, I mean, you would do that, and then you'd be... I guess you'd just be getting into checks too much. Maybe something like that. I mean, it's just probably... No. It just doesn't look like that's that great. It looks like it's good for black, so... I don't know. I honestly did not look at this, so I'm not sure what it would be here. Is that not something? Going down, down. Yeah, it's like the same thing. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't take a look at it, so I'm not sure like what the major difference is. But the variations I showed you were definitely very attacking. But anyways, that is that game. So like I said, I'm going to be doing what game? Fabiano Caruana versus Rashad Rapport in a second here. I'm just going to grab me something to eat, and then I'm going to do that game. these are all the games from the rounds. So there was only 3 rounds. So those 3 straight Wesley So games. So I got a little bit of time to do this next game. So I appreciate you guys very much. Spasibo to anybody coming from Russia. And Meraming Salamat, King Makai Bigan, and Makita Tayo Mamaya. And I will see everybody next time.